Right, welcome back. You're still watching SA Today. Now, two members of the economic freedom fighters became the first casualties of the leaked bank statements allegedly connected to President Cyril Ramaphosa's ANC leadership campaign, CR17. They both tendered their resignations as members of parliament and also from their leadership positions within the party. The EFF leadership has since accepted their resignations. Now, the two implicated politicians received 80,000 rand each from President Ramaphosa's campaign account. For some analysis on the story, we now speak to political analyst Lesiba Tefo, who's in our studios in Pretoria. Prof, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program. So, two MPs forced to resign for receiving money from the President's CR17 campaign account. Was that the right thing to do?
Well, I think it was not prudent of them to do that. And even the explanation they gave to date is not convincing. And it's a pity it resulted in them being casualties. But the how part of their resignation is what I find, the speed at which they decided to resolve this matter, I consider it immensely commendable for them and even for their organization. There are lessons to learn them because they are not the only ones implicated in matters of this nature, and not necessarily in politics, but even in the public sector. But people who will fight to the bitter end at high cost at that, defending the indefensible. That they could bar out in the manner they did, I find it exemplary, worthy of emulation going forward.
So what does this do for the EFF? Does it put them on higher ground?
Undoubtedly, it puts them on a high moral ground. And they must also thank their colleagues for the brave stance they took, because they could have dilly-dally, ducked and dived and tried to defend this way and that way, and it would not have been necessarily very easy to get rid of them. So, in the manner it has happened, I think it will enhance their image in the court of public opinion.
All right, so let's now talk broadly about, they're not the only ones that receive money. People that did receive money that don't belong to the ANC, what should happen to them?
Well, I'm not sure what it is that we expect to happen to them, because if it is said it's a reward for services rendered, it might carry weight. But it is at a political level that some of them may be found to wanting in terms of moral stance, in terms of their probity. That if you have Mr. Gondongwane, the economic advisor, alleged to have played a role and received something against the other party, for which in his position he ought to have been neutral and advised on policy matters and having made inputs supposedly to the manifestos. I think people like him might find their positions not very tenable. If anything, they will be pushed into another corner. They can no longer speak for the ANC, but for a faction of the ANC. There are also allegations of Mr. Mbalula having received something while he was perceived to have been one of the foot soldiers. In fact, the vanguards of the NDZ campaign. Again, politically, I think this revelation is going to weaken him. And he has not always been on firm ground because he's a very mercurial character, right? He has a little bit of a checkered background when it comes to consistency. He flip-flops many a times, and I suspect at one stage he might get a lethal blow to his political career.
So the Deputy Minister of State Securities, Zizi Kodwa, says that the amount that he received, which is the exact same amount, 50,000 rand, he says that this was work done at Luthuli House or for the ANC. It would be odd, though, wouldn't it, that a presidential campaign would be paying ANC officials money for work being done for the ANC?
You see, they have a tendency to be over hasty in their response. Are you saying to me that it was authorized by the ANC, that he should get that money because it was to supplement his salary or so, like it is alleged Ray Mvalula that he was no longer a minister, it was supplemented. Now, why is it that it's a faction of the ANC? If you say to me, the Ramaphosa gave him 5 rand, NDZ gave him 5 rand, then I can see the balance there. But I think people are not idiots. At one level, certainly, they must take responsibility. They nailed their colors to the mast without nailing them to the mast, leading the NDZ to the garden path, while at the same time knowing what they were doing. I suspect there will be casualties along the highway of life, and the moral stance of both Zizi and Mbalula also, in my considered opinion, have taken a knock. And whatever the stance they will take in the meetings of the ANC will always be taken with suspicion.
So one of the issues that hasn't been cleared up is that the presidential race ended in 2017. Payments were made after this date. And until they can explain why after this date, it does leave troubles, I guess, for people trying to interpret what this money could be for.
Yes, indeed. You see, and almost more than a year after the fact, and people are still being paid. It doesn't do anything good for the president himself. Certainly, it has weakened him immensely in the court of public opinion. And those that I interact with, they can no longer speak with a straight face when they talk about him. Even those who supported him, right, they no longer have the same vigor and conviction. Neither do I think when the big day comes next year, he will get as much support. And those who support will as much rigor as they had in 2017.
But I think, to be clear though, the only questionable criminal act, if there was one, or an act that needs to be questioned, is whether he lied about knowing where these funds were going and coming from. Beyond that, the movement of funds is not a crime, right?
No, I think we can try to play legalese around it. Then maybe, as he said, let's leave it to the court. It is the court of the legal court. I'm more concerned about the court of public opinion. In that regard, President Ramaphosa didn't acquit himself well at all. He gave more than was enough on the first day when he was asked about Bosasa. He was over hasty in his response, and that got him into trouble. The second point, when the question was raised, are you familiar with the goings on of your finances in the campaign? No, nothing doing. I'm not involved. I've been advised to stay outside. And even the managers of the funds went public to say, no, he's not part of it. Only for his fingers to be seen in the processes. Thirdly, then, no, information is leaked. Please, let's seal it. Let it not go public. Then again, you are inviting the public to say, what is it that you are hiding? These 3 points, as far as I'm concerned, he will have to work very hard to transcend them and regain the moral standing he had when he started.
All right, but this can't be the first time that presidential campaigns within the ANC and maybe even other parties have involved the raising of funds and, changing hands to make sure that your candidate wins. I mean, it seems quite obvious that you have to spend a little to mobilize support. Why is it murkier now? Because if it's been going on all this time, what is so different about now?
Is the denials. The denials and the denials and the denials. That's one. Number 2, especially when it comes to Ramaphosa, he was for transparency, he was for clean government, right? He was for accountability and responsibility. Those were the hallmark of his campaign. And today, very few can say he has lived up to that. So it's not about the legality of what has transpired and is still going on. In the main, It's about the perception created. I mean, it's almost like a myth being debunked in front of you, and you can't believe what you hear and what you see. Right? I'm one of those who gave him the benefit of the doubt and believed and trusted that he would make a difference. And I'm saying, so far, so good. Save for this, the man has done his bit, and he can perhaps still recover, but he will need better men and women around him to advise him, because I think his communication team might have to revise how they respond to questions. Because even the other day, to try to say the leaks that went out, the money he gave to the ladies is for the bereavement, now why worry about that? It's not really about that. It's about transparency, right? And owning up at the outset, rather than to come back later to say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have all the facts.
Is it possible also that, and we have to be cognizant of this, that there could be a hidden hand in releasing these reports, these leaked bank statements, to try and, I think some of his supporters have described it as fighting back?
And I wouldn't dispute that. If anything, I will give credit to that. But it doesn't exonerate him and his team. Because at the end of the day, it's not the how part of acquiring that is important right now. It's the what that matters. Is the substance. So far, right, even Madam Mkwabane, the public protector, he hasn't acquitted herself very well, but it is unfair to dismiss her off the cuff on everything that he says. She said there's something about this 500, and I would wish that more probes are made. She spoke about 400 million, and later on we have gone beyond 1 million, which confirms some of her findings. And that's why I caution against dismissing everything she does and says. Because right now, if people are not careful, she might come out, especially out of this, smelling more like a rose than people had ever thought.
All right, perhaps as a final question, what does the president need to do to put an end to this? Because a lot of people are starting to feel that he's being distracted by this issue instead of focusing on fixing the economy and creating jobs.
Human beings, Peter, you and I know very well, are more forgiving, especially you come forward and you own up. But there is also a limit to owning up to the mistakes, especially when your bona fides can also begin to be doubted, that the apologies are a ruse for all the things that you have done. But I doubt if many would say it's bad enough to warrant impeachment or to warrant removal. What I'm more worried about is the ammunitions he gave to his detractors, to the faction that is hell-bent on making him not succeed in his performance of state duties. They are distracting him, and I think they're succeeding, but inadvertently, he's also helping them one way or another.
All right, Professor, always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for your insights.